Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back. Today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim Daf Chaf. We begin right on top at the Mishnah. Nadar B'Chirim. So we go back to the previous Mishnah where we learned that Stam Nedarim Lahachmer. If a fellow expresses an undefined expression, so when it's just left undefined, we say L'chumra. We say he meant to express himself in a way which generates a neder. Why? Says the Rosh, because otherwise, why is he speaking? He should remain silent. The fact that a person gets up and speaks indicates he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to generate something. So therefore, even though his expression can lend to two possible interpretations, one generates a neder, the other one doesn't, we go l'chumra. However, we learned in the Mishnah as well, upirushan lahakal, he has the ability to interpret his words. If he comes back and he explains, no, I didn't mean that, I meant this, and I don't want a neder, I never meant a neder. We accept that as fact, and there is no neder. Now, truthfully, the Mefarshim point this out, the Ran and others, the Mishnah did not have to split, the halach into two parts, because those same examples, which we mentioned the other day, basar maliach, etc., which can lend to two interpretations, can be used to describe stam nedarim lahachmir. So if it's undefined and unexplained, we go l'chumra. And likewise, upirushan lahakil. If he does explain, we accept his explanation. So why then does the Mishnah present brand new cases to illustrate the idea of pirushan lahakil? Explains the Ran, because in the following four cases, there is an extra chiddush. These explanations are really far-fetched and almost hard to believe. They're not your conventional, translations and interpretations of these words and expressions. Nevertheless, he comes back and he explains himself as such. We accept it, and we nullify this neder. What are these four examples? Number one, nadar b'chirim. This loaf of bread should be upon me like a chirim. Chirim can mean chirim of hegdish. V'amar, and he explains, no, lo nadarti el b'chirim shel yam. You know what I had in mind? A fisher's net. Chirim is a fisher's net. That's what I meant. Like it says, charamim u'metzudes. So chirim was not a davar hanadar. Remember, you need to make reference to a davar hanadar, something which is asr by way of man, something which was generated by human initiation. That is called a davar hanadar, and that item which is asr can be used as a source and basis for further nedarim, but not cherma shel yam. For instance, he says, but carbon. This thing should have the status of the carbon. Typically, carbon means carbon of Hashem, davar hanadar. No. V'amar, he claims, I meant the gift that you offer to a king, sometimes also referred to as carbon. That's not davar hanadar. Third example, Hari atzmi carbon. He turns to his friend Shimon. Going forward, I am to you like a carbon. Atzmi, myself, am considered like a carbon. You can't benefit from me. V'amar, he says, Lo nadarti. You know what I meant? Etzem, a bone, which I put aside in my home to use for this very purpose. Now, why would a fellow be doing this? Says the Taisvis. He's doing it to trick people. So he's using a neder to sort of solidify and confirm and reinforce his stories that he's telling, that he's selling. Listen, this is true. In fact, if not, I'm going to make myself into a neder, usher to you, right? Atzmi, but it was just a trick. Etzem is a bone, worthless bone which has no halachic ramifications. Fourth example is, Koinam ishti nenesli. My wife cannot have anah from me. V'amar, he claims, not my current wife, my former wife. Lo nadarti ela b'ishti harishon shekirashti. It was my first wife that I divorced. So we have four examples of pirush, where we say lahakel. It's a non-neder. We accept his explanation as fact. Therefore, al kulan, regarding all these examples, ein nish'alan lahem. There's no need for the fellow to come and explain himself to the chacham, to have himself released from the neder. It isn't really a neder, it never took off. But v'im nishalu, if indeed they do approach the bezdin to release them from their vow, we make it difficult, we penalize them, we make it difficult for them. Divi Rabbi Meir, v'chacham oimrim, poischon lam pesach b'mokim acher. So the Ran explains, the Farshim explain as follows. According to Rabbi Meir, in certain cases, the Gemara will explain, we're speaking about an Amaretz. We don't want him to take things lightly, we make it more difficult for him. So number one, we are Einesh. We punish him. What does this mean? He made a neder and did not keep it. Right? Because he's thinking it's not a neder. Before we address his neder, before we allow him to revoke it, he's coming to ask us to revoke it, right? We have him make up for lost time. You transgressed, you violated your commitment for X amount of days, make up those days, and then we'll come back and take care of you. So that's Einshin Eisam. And number two, Achmir and Aleim, we are Machmir in terms of the process employed in releasing him from his neder. Typically, you may use a charota system. There are two possibilities, two ways to release a neder. Plain simple charota. Regret, this is just getting too hard for me. I regret. I wasn't, in a perfect frame of mind. I wasn't in a balanced frame of mind when I committed. I want to undo this. That's charota. Pretty simple, straightforward way of undoing a neder. That is kind of an external factor, not really actually neder related. Says Reb Meir, we are machmer. We will only nullify this neder by way of a Pesach system, which means we relate to some internal factor within the neder. Did you know that by making this commitment, it's going to bring about such and such results? Did you know that? And if you would have paid attention to that ramification, would you have made the neder? And he says, no, of course not. That's an internal factor. You're digging into the internals of the neder. That is required in this case as well. We are machmer. Chachamim disagree. Number one, we don't punish him for violating the neder, which wasn't really a neder to begin with. Number two, when it comes to actually being mevatel the neder, we are peischel and pesach. We even allow them to open a door externally, meaning we relate to an external factor as well. It doesn't need to be directly related to the neder and to the ramifications of the neder. Even just a plain simple regret and charata works. But we still inform the crowds how serious it is. Don't get involved in these types of expressions, even though they're not halachically binding. But one thing can lead to the next. We teach them not to do this, so that they don't take Nedarim lightly. Now we seem to have an inherent contradiction in the Mishnah. I'll go for Kashu. And first you tell me there's no need to ask the Chacham for Hataras Nedarim. It's not a neder, as per his explanation. Then you say, if they come to the Bezdin to deal with a neder, we punish them, we make it difficult for them. I just thought it's not a neder. It depends who's coming. In all these cases, there's no need to address the neder. It's not a neder. But when does this apply? Who is well versed? Who won't take this as a license to take Nedarim lightly? Who's not really well versed in all the intricacies of Nedarim. In this case, actually, the Ran explains it like this. He says that Talmud Chacham is trusted. He says it's trusted to explain himself. But the Amaretz is loy mehemen. We don't believe him. It's kind of far-fetched. It's hard to believe you meant atzmi as a bone. So in this case, we require a proper Hataras Nedarim procedure to take place. When he comes to the Bezdin to deal with his neder, we pile it up. We punish him for violating it. We make it difficult for him to release himself from that vow. Explains the Gemara Bishlam Machmir, and I understand the second concept. We make him go through a more formal procedure. We can't use a charata aspect, a regret aspect to get him out of the neder. So firstly, we need to come up with something internal within the neder, some sort of unforeseen ramification which allows us to undo it. It's like a neder tos. It was like a mistake. Had he have known, he wouldn't have done it. Okay, it's a tos. So you need to apply that process, that method. But what did you mean when you said we punish him? Kadesani, as we learned, Misha Nazar v'avar Nazirusay. A fellow accepted upon himself to be a Nazar and he violated the Nazirus. And he wants to come and revoke the Nazirus. We don't deal with him until he compensates for lost time. He observes 10 days of Nazirus in exchange for those 10 days that he violated. Rabbi Yehuda, when do we say you have to keep as many days as you lost? Benazirus mu'etes. When it's a small, standard length Nazirus of 30 days. Avo benazirus meruba, but if it's a long, year-long Nazirus, which you violated, you don't have to do over that year. 30 days is enough. That is the standard share of Nazirus. That highlights the fact that, look, Nazirus is something serious. So the same over here. Same concept applies here. The Amaretz who violated, we don't deal with him until he makes up for lost time. Once we have established that we don't tend to him until he makes up for lost time, therefore, Beidina, if there's a Bezdin that doesn't really comply, the Mistakiki, who allow themselves to deal with the situation as such and don't require the fellow to redo his lost time. So even if they're not encouraging him to do Hataras Nedarim, he presents himself to the Bezdin, asking for their services. But they're meant to punish him and be strict with him. And if they don't do that, Loy Avid Shafer, they didn't do the right thing. A step further, we put the Bezdin in the Cheder for allowing a fellow to take Nedarim lightly. Personally, Pesach. And it seems that the main focus is on the next part of the Mishnah, the last line. We highlight the seriousness of Nedarim. Don't get involved in these expressions, which can only lead to trouble. Tana, we learned in a Brisa. A person should keep away from Nedarim. Don't be a regular neder maker. Because you know what it's going to lead to? To the next level. It can bring you to even shvuos, which are more severe. We learned the other day, shvuah has lo yanaka. So the nedarim can lead to shvuos. Be careful. Likewise, va'al tehiragel islam aretz. Don't associate too closely with an am aretz. Sheseifai la'achilcha tvolim. Because ultimately, he might feed you a tevel food. Al tehiragel etzel kohen am aretz. Even if you're a kohen, don't spend time with a kohen am aretz as well. Sheseifcha or sheseifai la'achilcha truma tmeya. He might feed you truma which is tummy. Va'al tar b'sichem an isha. Don't have excessive interaction and discussion with a woman. Sheseifcha lovel deniyuf can come to improper interaction. Rabbi Achabar Yeshi Eimer, called Seifah Benashim, a person who indiscriminately gazes at women, Seifah bal diavera, it can bring him to pitfall. And if a fellow is not careful from looking at even the heel of an isha, we're speaking about his own wife, so we're going to see what this means. Having banim, she'enon mugan. What are the consequences? It can lead to his children not being up to par. Amar Rav Yosef, what are we speaking about? So pshat number one is Ubi Ishtei Nida, his own wife, who happens to be a Nida. And we are speaking about places in the body which are meant to be covered. So we're using the akev, the hail, as an example, as a makim, which perhaps in those days was meant to be covered, and therefore a person is meant to refrain from gazing at that area. And likewise, any other mekayimos which are meant to be covered. That's the first pshat. So even though she's his own wife, and even though she's going to be mutter to him down the road, at this point he's meant to refrain. Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Here's another pshat. We're speaking about one's own wife. Akeva diktani. The term akeva, which the Brisa mentioned, is actually b'makom hatanefis. It's speaking about the actual makom of the isha's erva. Why do we call it akeva? It's just a dignified way of expressing. Shu mechuver k'neged ha'ekev, because the makom of the erva is opposite the heel. So we're speaking again about one's wife. In the second pshat, she's completely tar. Nevertheless, a person is meant to refrain from gazing at the actual makom of the erva of the isha. Tanya, in fact, we learned in a brisa. The point of standing by Har Sinai and experiencing that awesome experience was meant to generate yira shamayim. Ba'avur tia yirase al pneichem. This awesome experience was meant to generate fear and awe to Hashem's great presence. And that yira is meant to be discernible upon your faces. How's that? Zubusha. Shame. Shame is visible upon a person's face, on his features. You see a bashfulness. And that's the trademark of a Yid. A Yid who relates back to Har Sinai, who experienced that awesome revelation of Hashem. A Yid now is in a perpetual state of yira, of busha from Hashem, which prevents one from chet. And in fact, the Mfarshim explained that gazing improperly in the makom erva of the isha affects this bashfulness, which is meant to prevent a person from chet. So again, the pasuk says, "Bavur tia yirase al pneichem." So busha, right? You see, boishes panim, az panim. These things are visible upon a person's face. Zu busha levilti techato, to prevent you from sinning. Melamed, we learn from here, shabusha mevil de yiras chet. Bashfulness, being in a state of busha, low key, that gets a person thinking and gets a person to, be more disciplined and avoid chet. Mikan amr, we learn from here. Siman yafa ba'adam. What's a good sign in a person? Shu baishan, when you see he has bashfulness, that's a good siman. Acherim eirim, others explain, kol adam misbaish, loy b'mehiru choyte. A person who has this characteristic will not easily come to chet. Umi she'en le'baishes pan, a person who does not exhibit busha, biyadua, let it be known, shaloi amdu avoisav al Har Sinai. His ancestors were not present by Har Sinai. Perhaps he's coming from a family of Gerim. They don't have this advantage, this element of busha to the extent of a Yid. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Havoy. The following four things, Daladvarim, sochuli malachi asharis, were taught to me by the malachi asharis. Now the Gemara on Amid Beis will tell us it's not actually malachim, rather Talmidei Chachamim, who are connected to the Torah, who in fact live an elevated life like Malachi Asharis. And in fact, they gave him instructions on how to behave upon interacting with one's wife in a dignified, disciplined, proper manner. Chigrin, mipnei ma'havyan. Why is it that we have people who are crippled? At times, this can be a result of their parents interacting in an improper way. Says the Rashi and the Iran, instead of face to face, it's from the back. Ilmim, so that results in a deficiency this manner. And the Iran says because Shina b'yorech like a b'yorech, since it was a deviation concerning feet, so it affected the kids' feet as well. Ilmim mipnei mahavyan. What about children who are mute? Where did that come from? Mipnei shemanashkim aloisem makim. Because father wasn't careful from applying a shika, a kiss, aloisem makim, and the makim of erva. Chereshim mipnei havyan. What about deaf mute? Because they communicate verbally at that time, which is inappropriate, and therefore it results in this deficiency being exhibited in the child. What about suman, blindness? How do the kids have this deficiency? Because the father is not careful from gazing at the makim of the erva, hence this result. We're going to have a kash on this. You're telling me they're not meant to have communication at that time of relation. Shalu es ima shalim. They've asked a woman named Shalim, she was called Ima Shalim, like Mrs. Shalim, the husband of Rabbi Lezer. Could you please explain to us, how is it so that Bonayich, Yefeif and Beyeser, your children are just beautiful? According to the Rush, it means below mum, without blemish. How are you zeicha? What's the trick to such pleasant-looking children? Amrlan, she told him like this. Here's the trick. Eina misaper imi. When my husband interacts with me, it's never at the beginning of the night. Lo b'tchilas halayla, not when the night begins. Because, as the Ran says, there are people milling around, women milling around the streets, and he wants to ensure a clear mind, a focused experience. So not at the beginning of the night, nor at the end, where people are already out in the streets again, rather at the midpoint of night. This way, it facilitates clarity and proper focus and attention. Ukshim Masaper, when he relates to me as married, and she refers to it as Masaper, which indicates there's some verbal interaction as well. How does he do it? In a very dignified manner. Megala tefach, he uncovers the tefach of her gufa. Machas tefach, covers the tefach, keeps things at a minimum. V'daima alav. Now his whole demeanor appears kamisha kafe shade, as always gripped by some demon. He's not overly infatuated and involved, more in a dignified manner. L'shem Shemai. V'amartili, and this is her speaking. She said, I asked my husband, Ma tam, why do you do it in this manner? Why do you time it to be in the middle of the night? V'amarlin explained to me, so that I avoid, relating to another woman, which could result in very serious repercussion. If a man's mind is diverted to somebody else, there's a lack of focus, a lack of mindfulness and internal interaction between him and her. It's reminiscent to mamzerus, which is an outright deviation. Of course, here it's just like sort of a reminiscence to that. So a mental deviation is tantamount to an actual deviation. In any case, that was her interaction with him. That was the question and answer. He explained, his behavior. Bottom line is, how does she relate to the whole interaction? Misaper. So apparently there's some discussion during that time, or according to other Mefarshim, this question and answer took place while they interacted as married. So we see there is interaction at that time. And here we say they're not meant to be speaking with each other. The answer is, depends what the topic is. If it relates to the matter at hand, it's perfect. But some other topic, that's not the time for discussion. Like Kashi, the answer is Habamili did Tashmish. If it's Tashmish related discussion, that's great. As the Ran says, Shari, of course, it's Mutta Kadela Atsaisa, to appease her and to bring them close emotionally. Habamili Achonaisa. But of course, one is meant to avoid discussing other topics, which just create a diversion. Rabbi Yechanan, although we just had Rabbi Yechanan Medavai quoting the Malachi Asharis, as per these 4 concepts. Do things properly, face to face, no discussion, avoiding gazing and kissing. You should know that's not the halacha l'maisa. Zu divrei Yochanan medavoy. That's his opinion. Aval amar chachamim, but the chachamim ruled otherwise. Ein halacha ki Yochanan medavoy. We don't paskin like him. Elo kol masha adam roitze lasis b'ishto. Rather, a wife is her husband's, domain, so to speak, and he's free to do whatever he wants, whatever he needs to do with his wife. Mashal lebasar habam beis hatavach. It's akin to a cut of meat which arrives from the butcher. Ratzalach lebemelach oichle. If he wishes to eat it salted, go ahead. Tzali wants to have it roasted, oichle, he can have it that way. Mavushal cooked, oichle, he can eat it that way. Shalk overcooked, oichle, he can eat it that way. V'chein, dug, same thing with a fish. Habam beis hatzayid, which comes from the fisherman. So the halacha is that we impose no restrictions on a man. Amra meimar, man malach hasharos rabbanon. In fact, when the Gemara referenced the malach hasharos, it wasn't really the malachim. It was a reference to Talmidei Chachamim. The tema malach hasharos mamish, because if it were really malachim, how could we ignore the malachim's instructions? If anybody knows what's going on in heaven, it's them. Amai Amar Rabbi Yehuda ein halacha ki Yochanan medavoy. How could Rabbi Yehuda profess that we don't follow this halacha? Ha'inu b'ki b'tzuras havlad tvei. Certainly the malachim are more proficient, more expert, and have an insider perspective at what affects a child, what affects the development of a vlad. And if they're telling us keep away, be careful, lest it affect your children, you better be careful, listen to them. So apparently, it was actually not coming from the malachim, rather from the Talmidei Chachamim. And, it was like any other matter of halacha. It wasn't, something which was describing, an actual fact in Shemaim. It was like an opinion, a halacha, like any other halacha in Shas. And that lends to discussion, and to machlokes, and to opposing views. And the Chachamim ruled otherwise. You cannot possibly impose these restrictions on a husband. As the Ran says, the Pasuk says, Ki yikach ish isha. She's his. La'aseh yispo kol cheftzeh. And in fact, the Rambam paskins like that, right? That we don't impose any of these restrictions, any of the 4 restrictions that were mentioned, even the via shalei kedarka, but the Rambam actually says, well, vad provided, shalei kedarka is mutar, but when care is taken, shaloi yeti shichva zer levatala. So physical contact is mutar in that manner, but without actually emitting zer levatala. So it's an important fact to remember. Now, that's the Rambam's opinion, but other Rishonim learn differently. In fact, that's what it seems from the Shulchan Aruch as well, that other than shalei kedarka, which is mutar, but the other concepts of refraining from excessive speech, unnecessary talk, and the din of being mastakel b'eis hamakam or noishik b'eis hamakam is brought lahalacha l'maisa. But in any case, this list of instructions was given by the Talmidei Chachamim. V'amai karilu malach hasharos. Now, why do we choose to refer to them as malach hasharos? The mitzaynik and malach hasharos because they stand out. They're easily identified, like malachim. They stand out. They're not your typical. They dress differently, etc. The Rush actually says like this: mitzaynik and malach hasharos means b'torah b'mitzvahs. They're outstanding in their commitment to Torah mitzvahs. Uprushin ukdoshim mishar hamoin. They're on a different plane in terms of their pursuits, desires, and behaviors from the rest of the crowd. Ki kedushas malach hasharos. They're like malachim in that regard. In fact, the Chazon Ish used to say, a person who's committed to Torah, saturated with Torah, he's like, you look at him like a human being, but he's not. He's like a malach walking in this world. Chazon Ish. So perhaps it's very fitting that specifically in this, in this discussion, in the context of these, ideas, we make reference to the instructors, to the Chachamim as Malach HaSharis. It's a lesson for all. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Mada, he says, even though al pidin everything is mutter, but it should be known, if one wants to have good kids, then his behavior should match those desires. He says, if a person behaves like, the Hamoin Am, like the common folk, that's okay. The Gemara paskins, it's mutter. But guess what? He will have kids like the common folk. That's fine. If that's fine for you, that's okay. But if a person wants to be special and be zech to something extra, then follow the instructions of the Malach HaSharis, or Kedoshim and Prushim. And their behavior is discernible in their families and their children. Okay, interesting point from the Rambam. Continues the Gemara. So Pi Halacha, we said even Hafich al Shulchan even Shloi Kedarka is mutter. In fact, we have two stories to prove that. Hayda Soikel made the Rebbe. This woman comes to Rebbe to complain. Amrullah, she tells him, Rabbi HaKadosh, Arachti lo Shulchan, I set for him a table. This is just a euphemism. Right? Like we say, there's achilas, food, and there's the lashon achila relating to tashmish. It's just a lashon nakia, dignified expression. I presented myself to him. I made myself available to him in the regular way. V'afcha, he turned it over. He insisted on interacting in the reverse manner. Amrullah, he says, look, you married the man, he's your husband. Biti, my daughter, Torah tirascha, the Torah made you mutter to him in any which manner he chooses. Vani ma'asalech, what could I do? I can't interfere. Go ahead. The Medrash says, Eizeh isha kshera, what constitutes an isha kshera? Who is oisa retzain bal, who conforms to her husband's wishes. Go back and serve your husband. That makes you great. There was another story. It was an Isha who came complaining to Rav. This time it was Rav. Amrullah, she tells him the same thing. Rabbi, look, I'm available to him, and he turned me around. Omar, he says, Ma'ishal bin Benisa, it's no different than a fish, meaning you're his wife, and that's your obligation. The pasuk says, Sur achri levavchem, one should not stray after his heart's desire. Mikan Amar Rebbe. Here's a chiddush. Of course, not to stray after, other nashim, but even within a person's own wife, even within that interaction, one must be careful to maintain proper focus and concentration. The tashmish is meant to be a moment of unison, of achdus, of shleimus. Therefore, Mekanam Rebbe learns from this pasuk, Al yishta adam b'koizeh, one should not interact with his wife. V'yitin einav b'koiz achar, and have his mind on somebody else. Amar Avina, lo nitzrucha ela la'afilu beis nashav. The chiddush is even if they're both his own wives, let alone a different wife, even his own wife, even let alone somebody else's wife, even his own wife. Maintain that focus. The pasuk in Yechezkel says, in the future, Hashem will cleanse Klal Yisrael from all types of deficiencies. Ubaroisi mikem, baroisi lashon boirer, I will cleanse out from amongst you all those individuals who are called hamurdim, rebellers, v'apoishimbi, and those violators. Who are these people? How did they come about? How were they created? Why are they deficient? Because there was some deficiency at that moment when they were created. Amar Belevi, Elu b'nei Tesha Mides. The pasuk here is referring to 9 possible situations of deficient children resulting from a deficient father-mother interaction. We have a Rashi Tevis, Bnei Asnas Mishka'ach, as we're going to see. So the Aleph stands for Bnei Ema, a man who instills fear in his home. And his wife relents to his interaction with her out of fear. That's totally improper. And it results in a child who's created with a deficiency. Likewise, Bnei Anusa, She's physically forced by him. B'nei snua, there's a dislike amongst them. It's not a proper interaction. There's no meeting of the minds and the hearts there. B'nei nidui, if the fellow is in cherem when he interacts with his wife. B'nei temura, this fellow had 2 wives. He interacts with one thinking it's the other one. B'nei meriva, they interact while there's discord in the family, while there's fighting. B'nei shichrus, they're intoxicated. There's a lack of focus. B'nei grishas halev, he intends on divorcing her, and he's still interacting with her. B'nei irvuvia, a woman who interacted with many men, and the child is born, there's no way to define, to verify who is his father. He's lacking in yichus. B'nei chatzufa, a child born from a mother who exhibited brazenness. The Ran says, Shemi'iza panea, liyos tevase peh. She requested this interaction from her husband. That's totally improper. And the child born from this type of experience has that pagam. Eini, is that a problem, really? An isha is not meant to initiate? I thought it was actually something commendable. A woman who initiates. Guess what kind of kids he has? Great kids. He's going to have kids on a great level, unfound even during the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu turns to Klal Yisrael, please send your representatives who will lead the community, anashim chachamim, unavonim, wise and insightful. So both qualities he wanted, and he didn't find both. When describing the next step, actually appointing the leaders, Rosh Shivteichem, we don't find him referring to them as Nevonim. Apparently he couldn't find any Nevonim. Right? Nevonim is something unique. Uksiv, and what does it say? That by Leah Imenu, who initiated her interaction with Yaakov Avinu, right? She went out with the donkey and she invited him into her tent. She was Zecha to Nevonim. Uksiv Yisachar, Chamar Garam, the Chamar, the donkey, is the one that caused. He was riding on a donkey, and that donkey turned to her tent. Chamar Garam, that was Garam, that resulted in the birth of Yisachar. And because it came about by her initiation, Leah Imenu, Uksiv B'nei Yisachar, Yoide Bina L'Itam, they had this quality of Bina, of Nevonim. And Farshim explained, Bina is related to the Isha. The man is called Chacham. He has Chachma. The Isha has insight. Bina Yasera. The fact that she initiated this interaction, she brought it about. She's Zeichet to have kids on an even greater level than the standard. She has Bina. Yoide Bina. Apparently it's something positive, not negative. The answer is, it depends how. Explicit is not something proper, but implicit is okay. In fact, there's a Mila, and she's Zeicha to great kids. Hahi, that's speaking the Meratzia Artsuya, she's Meratzim. The Ran says, Shema Fata Isai, B'Diveritsuya, Pisui, Pius. Just like Leah did. She didn't actually tell him straight out. She says, come to my tent. Of course, we're not speaking that she's actually explicitly relating to the interaction. So she's doing it in that manner to be zeicha the kids, or just to enhance her relationship with her husband, to solidify their relationship, solidify the domestic situation. That's her kavana. That's a great thing, and she's zeicha to big things. Hadron Allah ve'ilu mutar. Let's recap today's daf. We started with Nedarim, which allow for interpretation, pirush al-hakal. What happens when he explains himself? So if it's a Talmud Chacham, we just do away with it. No problem. We trust him. Amaretz, according to Rameir, we're machmer. According to Rabbanan, we're not. But we still inform them how difficult, how serious these things are. A person should not be accustomed to making Nedarim and many other things which can lead to Avera. Gazing and excessive discussion with a woman is not something recommended. We learned about the busha and discipline and proper behavior b'shas tashmish. Opidin, we said haficha shulchan is mutter. The Talmid Chachamim lead a higher life. That's why they're called Malchei Ashuris, which enhances their offspring as well. We learned about keeping away from these 9 elements from various elements of interaction, and the zechus that an isha has by facilitating her closeness with her husband. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.